Welcome back to Legalese 123, where we are covering cases across America. Hello, and welcome back to Legalese 123. I'm your host, Missy K. I hope you're doing very well on this lovely Sunday, December the 14th. Well, we had our lovely holiday party last night. It was delightful. The food was enjoyable. Met a whole bunch of new people. And of course, what did I talk about? I started talking about the cases that I'm covering, and everybody was quite captivated. They were like, wow, not really. Wow. Of course, we were talking all about Brian Walsh and Karen Reed. Cannot go without a day of talking about those cases in the what everybody calls Massachusetts. So, did you know that it is 11 more days until that Christmas holiday? So make sure you get out there and do your holiday shopping. 11 days left. So, what are you hoping from Santa under the Christmas tree this year? Are you hoping for something nice, or are you hoping for something useful? You know, the saying goes, buy something that you can use, buy something that you need, and then something that, you want, right? So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, it is Friday case catch up, but because we've been covering the Brian Walsh trial and that has been daily and hours and hours and hours, we had to sort of push that aside and go to Sunday case catch up. So let's bring it up and show you what we're talking about. All right, I got to remove this holiday banner. You can't see anything. Let me remove that. Well, now I don't know how to remove that. Sorry. Let's just go. Oh, no, I don't want to do that either. If I unclick it. There we go. All right. So, what are we covering? Well, as you know, we are in the thick of things with the Brian Walsh trial. Who is Brian Walsh? Brian Walsh is accused of unaliving his wife, Anna Walsh. They had many issues in their marriage, and she had returned home from Washington, D.C., which is where she resides, to come home for the New Year's holiday. They had a friend come over for dinner that evening, and then he left around 1:30 in the morning, and something happened between 1:30 and 4:52 a.m. because at 4:52 a.m. Brian Walsh started Googling how to dispose of a body. So, he was charged with 3 crimes. He was charged with murder, he was charged with lying to the police, he was charged with improperly disposing of a body. Before his trial, he pled guilty to the lying to the police and improper disposing of a body. So those 2 elements can't quite come into the trial, but they did very briefly. For example, the defense conceded that he had lied to the police and that he disposed of her body. So, with about 10 days worth of testimony and 47 witnesses the Commonwealth put on, the defense rested and did not put on any witnesses, and Brian Walsh did not testify. Although the defense attorney, Larry Tipton, did make a statement in the beginning stating that Brian Walsh would testify and that he would explain exactly what happened, because their defense was something suddenly happened in the middle of the night and she passed away, and he panicked and didn't know what to do, and so he just chopped her up and threw her in dumpsters throughout Massachusetts. I kid you not. So if you haven't been watching this trial, long story short, she passes away somehow. Maybe he unalived her. We don't really know what happened to her. He starts Googling all of these things in the middle of the night or early morning hours. And apparently he might have started to dismember her and throw her in the trash, because there is a video of him later on that day on January 1st throwing something in the trash at the liquor store. Little did Brian realize that his Mac Chromebook synced up with his child's iPad because they had the same Apple ID. Now, I'm not telling you how to crime, so just advice. all of your stuff gets stored on the cloud. And if you have one device that syncs up with another device, those things can be cross pollinated, and therefore one device can see what the other device is doing. He didn't realize that. And when the police asked to look at his devices, he said, sure, go look at the cell phones, because he didn't think anything was going on. Then, of course, Lieutenant Fanning from the Massachusetts State Police arrived at his house and saw the iPad and said, hey, what about this device? And he was like, sure, because he didn't think anything would be on there. Well, as the Massachusetts police do, they download everything, and therefore they found out his location data. And he had stated that he was at several different locations when he really wasn't. He was at other locations doing his dastardly deeds. And one of those was going to the Lowe's Home Improvement and buying buckets, Tyvek suits, plastic wrapping, tape, and lots of cleaning supplies. And then the next morning, he starts to really Google how to dismember a body and what you should do with that body. So, currently, the jury has this case. Jury deliberation started late afternoon on Friday, and the jury then now needs to get to decide whether they want to charge him with murder 1, murder 2, not guilty, or they could be a hung jury. So in Massachusetts, the difference between murder 1 and murder 2 is premeditation and intent. First-degree murder involves killing with a deliberate planning, premeditation, malice after forethought, extreme cruelty, atrocity, or during other serious felonies. Well, second-degree murder is intentional killing with malice, but without premeditation, often impulse, but still malicious, and occurring during a non-life punishable felony. So what does that mean? Well, the Judge Frenier, who is the judge presiding over this case, she did say premeditation can be anything from planning it months in advance to weeks in advance, days, hours, and even seconds. So if you're in the act and you think that you're going to go ahead and you're going to M someone, even that split second could be premeditation, which then that can go to first-degree murder. So if you don't think that he premeditated it, and also there's some other language that second-degree murder might be more appropriate. What is the jury going to decide? We have no idea. The jury did come back with questions mid-afternoon asking about 2 exhibits, one of which was Anna lying on a rug in the living room. That rug was one of the rugs, well, that was the rug that was found in the trash dump that the police got. Getting his location data and looking for surveillance, they went and found that he had thrown some stuff in the dumpsters. One of the trash pulls had all of a couple of articles of clothing of Anna's, her purse, etc., that Brian had thrown away, plus a Tyvek suit, plus some plastic sheeting, and the rug. So the jury wanted to see that picture of Anna on the rug. Later, it was determined that the exhibits were not labeled as clearly as the prosecution and defense could have labeled them. So they went back and labeled them, and they're going to give that to the jury. So the jury has a readable list of exhibits. I believe there was about 265 exhibits entered into this case. So what does the jury get to decide? Well, there are text messages. There's text messages between him and her. There's text messages between her and her boyfriend, William Fastow. Google searches that started at 4:52 a.m. on January 1st and went up until, I think, January 3rd. Just a variety of things about disposing of a body, inheriting after a murder. Can you inherit after your wife is missing? Is your wife missing? What do I do? Remember, he didn't report her missing until January 4th. Video of him at dumpsters. When I say dumpsters, he had Googled apartment complexes in which he could go and dispose of her body. And there is a video footage of him carrying an awfully large black trash bag that seems heavy and him throwing it away. There's also video evidence of him at Lowe's and Home Depot. At Lowe's, he just bought buckets. At Home Depot, he bought buckets with lids. You be the decider as to what you think that means. So his location data, he was at various locations. I told you about the apartment complexes, the Lowe's, the Home Depot. He was at CVS buying, or Walgreens buying bandages and antibiotic cream because he had a cut on his hand after January 1st in the afternoon. He was buying hydrogen peroxide. He was buying ammonia because he Googled what cleaning supplies can you use to clean up blood? How can you clean up blood off of a wood floor? Just a variety of things. If you want to see a list, I'm sure you could Google it. Definitely go into the case notes and you can see the day that the police testified as to the Google searches. It is enormous. Plus, I did a case wrap up where I told you all of the things. Financial matters. Well, apparently, Brian Walsh was a trust fund baby, right? His father was extraordinarily rich, so was his mother. His father was a neurosurgeon. His mother was a heiress to the fortune of her family, had imported rugs of all things, you know. So Brian had a life of luxury, and apparently he was living that life. Well, he had art fraud charges put upon him. Why? Because he had sold some fake Andy Warhols to people. So the feds got involved and he was charged with, fraudulently selling art. And those charges starting from 2018. He thought that the feds were just going to give him probation, but he learned around the 27th of December that year, 2022, when Anna had come home to visit for the holidays, that the federal prosecutors were actually thinking about giving him time in prison. And that was a strain on their marriage. He was on home confinement. So he was at home in Cohasset, Massachusetts, while she was in Washington, D.C., trying to make a living. He wasn't bringing in any money. It turns out Brian's mother was paying for everything. She was paying for the rental house in Cohasset, which was anywhere between $4,500 a month to $5,000 a month. She was paying for all of the electronic devices that the kids and Brian were using, and who knows whatever else mommy was paying for. It is reported that Brian Walsh had bought Anna a $100,000 ring. Yep. He's not making any money. Where is that coming from? They did buy and sell some properties, but it seemed like a lot of things were in Anna's name. So there were a lot of financial issues. He needed to pay restitution for his federal case. Anna wanted him to take responsibility and just go to jail because she was living in limbo. The kids could not come and live with her in DC because he was the primary caregiver, and that is why he was out on his home confinement to take care of the children while Anna worked. So these strains, plus also she did have a paramour, contributed to all of the factors that perhaps led to her demise. The defense did not put on a case, and so unfortunately, Mr. Proctor, who has the big X on him, did not get to testify in this case, although he was the lead investigator, we found out later on through the testimony of Connor Keefe. So, no Michael Proctor, no texts. So sad. So when are we going to hear about Michael Proctor's text? Well, hang on. Let's see. What's the next case? Miles King. Okay, so why are we covering Miles King? It's only because of Proctor, right? We want to see those Proctor texts. So King was indicted for first-degree murder in the death of Marquis Simmons. Miles King is a rapper. He lives in Massachusetts. Long story short, Rosemary Scapiccio is his defense attorney. And who is Rosemary Scapiccio? She is an amazing attorney who helps those who are getting injustice from the police and also the court system. She is an advocate for those who are not getting fair treatment. she is a proponent of transparency. So she is one that's trying to get Michael Proctor's texts because she stated, if Michael Proctor is saying bad things about Karen Read, what is Michael Proctor saying about those of other races, African Americans? She said black and brown people. That was her direct quote. She was instrumental in getting the federal dump of Michael Proctor's cell phone texts. And then afterwards, Michael Proctor had his own cell phone dumped again, in which there were 10,000 plus messages, videos, photos, a lot of inappropriate things. And so now she fought really hard to get access to those things to see whether or not anything is relevant in the Miles King case. There was a hearing just on the 10th about getting Michael Proctor's texts. Finally, Lisa Beatty from the district attorney's office came to the rescue, and she went ahead and said, all right, Judge Krupp was the presiding judge. He stated everybody gets the texts, but it's under a protective order, so only those who are involved in these cases are allowed to get the text. What does that mean? There are 19 cases pending that Proctor was the lead investigator on, in which pretty much everybody in those cases will get access to Proctor's federal texts, as well as the 10,000 miscellaneous information that was just released at the end of October. What does that mean? Well, we still don't know. We still don't know what's on those texts. Will we find out? Well, our next case is the Miles King case. There is a compliance hearing on February the 12th at 2 p.m. There's a review status on the 13th at 2 p.m. If you don't know the Massachusetts system, Judge Krupp is the holding court in the criminal cases in Norfolk County. Norfolk judges rotate. Judge Krupp is getting ready to get off the bench, and I think he's going to civil somewhere in Boston, is what he stated. But since he's been on this case, he doesn't want to let it go. He is going to continue the Miles King case. And so he said, all right, well, this is where we're at. This is the train we're on. This is where we're headed. So the compliance hearing, the compliance hearing, he's not going to be available for, but the review status is via Zoom on the 13th at 2 p.m. And there is a non-evidentiary hearing on the 3rd of April. And that's a wah, super sad. Why? Because Rosemary Scapiccio had an evidentiary hearing going on where she barbecued Adam Lawley. Who's Adam Lawley? Adam Lawley was a district attorney who was on the Karen Read case. He tried her first case, and in the second round trying Karen Read, he was second chair to the new attorney, the special prosecutor, Hank Brennan, because they didn't think Lawley did a good enough job. So they hired Hank Brennan to come on in. So Lawley had to take a second seat. Rosemary Scapiccio got Adam Lawley on the stand. She roasted him with potatoes, green beans, carrots, and a whole bunch of fiery barbecue, and asked him, why? What's your procedural issues? Why haven't you turned over the search warrants? You had them in the grand jury, but you didn't send them to us, and we've asked for them in discovery many times. Can you scream it from the high tops of heaven? Massachusetts, you have a discovery issue problem. And who is at the heart of it? It is lovely Michael Proctor. How come Michael Proctor doesn't turn over discovery? He doesn't need to. Discovery schmovery. You don't need any of that stuff, right? You don't need anything to prove that your client is innocent. Nah. So Michael Proctor didn't turn over the affidavits. She asked Adam Lawley, why didn't you go back? What's your procedures? Why didn't you ask him for it? Well, I did. Well, how come at the next conference you didn't ask where it's at? Oh, I did, but he didn't give him to me. So whatever. And everything is whatever. So unfortunately, there's going to be a non-evidentiary hearing on the 3rd. And what that means is they just go over motions and go over what evidentiary issues are you having? So it's super sad, but that's where we're at. So is Miles King ever going to be solved? Are we ever going to go to trial? Is Marquis Simmons going to get justice? I don't know. It seems in Massachusetts, there's no speedy trials and everything just sort of just goes by the wayside. I also would like to remind you that this happened in 2021 or in 2025 going to 2026. You do the math. 6 minus 1 is 5. 5 years. But Miles King is out on bail. Why is that? Because they didn't turn over the discovery. That's right. So Miles King is out on bail, living life, awaiting trial. Will the Proctor text come in? What do they say? And will that derail any justice for Marquis Simmons? We don't know, but stay tuned to that one. That's why we're covering that one, because it's going to be interesting. All right, what is going on with Aidan Carney versus Aidan Carney, aka Turtle Boy? So Carney is being accused. So who's Aidan Carney? Aidan Carney is a journalist, a blogger, a YouTuber who has been instrumental in the Karen Read case. How has he been instrumental? Well, he was behind the scenes talking about the case, getting the word out, talking about corruption, talking about the House defendants and who was involved and who wasn't involved. He helped uncover a lot of relationships in Canton because it's a small town. Who knows who and what? Because they just seem to dispel things and state, oh, I don't know this person, when clearly there was a connection. Pictures and videos and stuff of people being together. And then they lied on the stand and said, I don't know this person. I can't make this stuff up. I really can't. So Aidan Carney was instrumental in helping the defense get the word out about the Karen Read case and the corruption and a lot of questionable things going on in her case. Karen Read and Aidan Carney are connected in life forever until things get resolved. It doesn't seem like that's happening anytime soon. So in this, as he was exposing the things that were happening, the witnesses were screaming, hey, make him stop talking about me. Stop saying things about me. Stop calling me a murderer. He had a rolling rally where he would go to the participants in the houses, and he was on public streets, and he was out there calling them murderers or telling them, don't lie, tell the truth, etc. Is that witness intimidation, or is that a First Amendment right? You be the judge. So he is still being accused of intimidating witnesses. That happened in 2023. And then he got a window charge in 25. What's the window charge? He was with a friend at CF McCarthy's. That is one of the bars that Karen Read had gone to on that fateful night that ended up having the life of John O'Keefe ended. So he was out with a friend, and D&E Pizza is in Canton. Canton's a small town. And they were walking by, and they were at the window, and they were kind of tipsy and drunk, and were making fun of things and talking and making faces and stuff at the window. There happened to be a camera that was on them. Did they know the camera was there? I think so. Did they know that the camera there was one outside and one inside? And the one on the inside voice recorded what they were saying. And so since he's already out on bail and he's already up for witness intimidations, the Commonwealth decided to put more charges on him for intimidating the witness or window. Now, Aidan did not know that Colin Albert was inside. Who's Colin Albert? Colin Albert is the son of Chris Albert. Chris Albert owns D&E Pizza. Chris Albert is the brother of Brian Albert. Brian Albert was a Boston police officer who lived at 34 Fairview, who was he owned the home where John O'Keefe was found deceased on his front lawn. So that's kind of the who and the what, right? There are many characters involved in Karen Read's case. There are many characters involved in Aidan Carney's case. So where are we? No more Judge Krupp. Remember, I just mentioned Judge Krupp before. Judge Krupp is off of criminal cases and now is going to civil in Boston. Judge Krupp wanted off of this case. Why? We don't know for sure, but the special prosecutor Cosgrove, who is prosecuting Aidan Carney's case, was a former judge in Canton. He is now since retired. Judge Krupp may have recused himself because he knows special prosecutor Cosgrove. Is that why? Nothing's been officially stated. So, Aidan Carney just got a new judge. Why does that matter? Well, in Massachusetts, as we talked about kicking things down the road, when you get a new prosecutor, when you get a new judge, time stops because the judge needs to get caught up with this case. A new special prosecutor needs to get caught up with the case. And so things just move at a snail's pace. Judge Belezos just had a hearing with Aidan and the attorneys just on December the 5th. What happened there? So the judge laid out who he was, what his qualifications were, what potential bias, or not necessarily bias, but what his relationships were with other people, and whether or not that would be a conflict of interest. All parties agreed there's no conflict. So now they are moving forward. The train is moving forward, but at a snail's pace. Up next is the motion to disqualify Cosgrove. Remember that Aidan Carney's attorneys, Tim Bradel and Mark Bedrow, have filed many motions, and one of which is to disqualify Cosgrove because Lindsay Gattani, who is a ex-paramour of Aidan Carney, is a witness in this case. They made her a witness by serving her with a grand jury summons. There's some other related information in there. And in true fashion in Massachusetts, if you turn over your cell phone, the police just go ahead and download everything. They downloaded Lindsay's phone. She was helping them in these intimidation cases against Aidan Carney. They downloaded her phone, gave everything to the defense, and then it went out to the world. So she is suing the Michael Morrissey, who is the head of the Norfolk District Attorney's Office. She is suing special prosecutor Cosgrove, and she is suing Brian Tully. Well, she sent a demand letter to them asking for $50,000 or she's going to sue. This created a conflict of interest on another case with Aidan Carney, so therefore they didn't have anybody to prosecute, so they said, we're done with that case. Aidan's defense team says the same thing is happening in this case. So Judge Belezos said, okay, well, let's hear this motion. So the motion to disqualify is going to be on January 23rd. We don't know the time. He did say it was going to be in person, and Judge Belezos is currently housed in Suffolk, which is in Boston. So not in Dedham, not in Norfolk court. Is it going to be Zoomed? We don't know. So stay tuned. We hope that we can get full access to this case and see what's happening. But the judge was very strict and very stern about when to file things, how to file things, and timeliness. Cosgrove has been notorious for not filing things on time and just saying, and then like blaming technology or blaming his inability to go file things in person in Norfolk. So they wrapped all of that up. So the disqualification can happen on the 23rd. If he's disqualified, will that be the end of the case? That's what the defense is hoping for. They're hoping for another no prosecutor on this case, and they just drop everything. Will that happen? And will Aidan Carney be free in January? Stay tuned. But if that doesn't happen, will there be a non-evidentiary hearing? That's what the defense would like as well. There's also the motion to dismiss. But they were talking about long-term goals, because that's what a judge does. And if a trial were to happen, it wouldn't happen until November or December of 2026. And that was per Tim Bradel, who said, listen, especially on the 25 window case, they don't even have the grand jury minutes from that. Why? because in Massachusetts, there's no timeline. And discovery, schmovery, you don't need no discovery to put on your case, right? So that's where we are in Massachusetts. What's up next? Now we have the Karen Read civil case. Remember, she has two civil cases. One is the family of John O'Keefe, Paul O'Keefe, and family are suing Karen Read. They are suing her for wrongful death in the case of John O'Keefe. They're also suing the bars, C.F. McCarthy's and the Waterfall Bar, who are in Canton. Remember, Karen Read met John at C.F. McCarthy's. They were getting drinks there. They got a text to go over to the waterfall to go see the Albert clan at the waterfall. They were then asked to go to Brian Albert's house to continue the celebration. And something happened. Karen dropped him off. She found John passed away at 6 a.m. in the morning with a big gash on his hands, black and blue eyes. He had swollen hands and dog bites and dog scratches on his arms. So what happened to John O'Keefe? If you want more deep dive into the Karen Read case, go into my case brief. There is a somewhat deep dive, but there is not enough time in the world to go over every aspect of the Karen Read case. You either have to be there or just go watch the trial 1 or trial 2. I mean, trial 1 gives you everything. Trial 2, they buttoned up things. So what's happening in the Karen Read civil case where the O'Keefe family is suing her? Now, mind you, Karen Read is suing everybody. And in this, in the justice, in the absence of time, they are consolidating the cases for discovery. All of the people that are involved in this case are also involved in the other case. So all lawyers and all parties involved have agreed that during the discovery process, for example, in the deposition, all parties are to be there. That means all the lawyers from the bars, all the lawyers from Karen's cases, her insurance companies, as well as the lawyers for the O'Keefe family are all together deposing witnesses to consolidate. But the cases are separate. The O'Keefe family is suing Karen Read. That is happening in Plymouth. That is still going forward. There is going to be a motion to compel and a status hearing on the 19th. What does that mean? Well, the judge sort of is the overseer of the case, and they come together once a month, every couple of months to say, where is this case going? How are the motions going? Are you guys playing nice with each other? Are you getting discovery? Are you getting discovery? Are you getting the materials that is needed? And then sometimes they file motions to say, we're not going to turn over this discovery. You don't have to turn over discovery. Or they're not playing nice, judge. And the judge is sort of the referee. So status hearing on the 19th. The judge will then just say, how are things going? How can we continue this to move forward on this train? And then we'll get an update. But just remember, civil cases can take years. And in that process, what could happen? Well, just remember, the lawyers are the ones that are making all of the money. And that in the end, nobody really wins unless the case gets resolved. Could the bars eventually just say, okay, we're going to settle this case just to get it over and done with? Absolutely. Can Karen Read's insurance company say, we're spending too much money in legal fees, we just want this to end? Absolutely. Is that what the O'Keefe family is hoping for? Absolutely. Let's get a payout. Is Karen Read happy about that? No. She wants to clear her name. So that's what's happening in that case. Moving on. So the Karen Read's team is asking the Norfolk District Attorney's Office for all of Proctor's 10,000 plus messages from the new cell phone dump. The Norfolk District Attorney's Office said, no way, that's too far-reaching of a request and it doesn't pertain to the Karen Read case. So they deny the motion to compel. So this is where the judge comes in, and the judge may say, it's pertinent to this case, or you need to hone down exactly what you're looking for in the proctor texts and, be a little bit more descriptive as to what you're looking for. What will happen? Who knows? But this is what we do, and this is what we cover. So I'll let you know what the latest and greatest is. Now, Karen Read is suing everybody. And by that, I mean everybody. So first are the House defendants. Who's who? So this is Jennifer McCabe. Jennifer McCabe's sister is Nicole Albert. Jennifer is married to Matt McCabe. Her sister, Nicole Albert, is married to Brian Albert. Brian Albert was the homeowner at 34 Fairview. These four characters were at the home the night John O'Keefe passed away, as well as this gentleman here, Brian Higgins. Brian Albert at the time was a Boston police officer. He knew John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe was a Boston police officer. Brian Higgins is an ATF officer. Brian Higgins had an office inside the Canton Police Department. Why? Because he and Chief Berkowitz were really good friends. So all of these characters were at the Waterfall Bar, as well as a couple of other members from the Albert family and some friends of John O'Keefe's. The Albert said, well, actually, Jen McCabe said, hey, we're going to go to the Albert house and continue this party. You guys want to come? And John's like, yeah, let's go. Karen wasn't sure. Karen is an outsider. Karen is not from Canton. Karen is from Mansfield. Well, Fall River, Mansfield. So she was just dating John O'Keefe. So they wanted to go to the house. She didn't want to go. She dropped him off. He was passed out in the lawn. What happened to John O'Keefe? We don't know. So Karen is suing she calls the House defendants. That's these 5 characters right here. She is also suing Michael Proctor, former trooper Michael Proctor. Remember, he got fired from the Massachusetts State Police. How does one get fired from Massachusetts State Police? Well, he had bias in the case against Karen. Plus, he did some other things with Brian Albert's brother, Kevin Albert, and basically was drinking on the job and his text messages. She is also suing Yuri Buchanan in his personal capacity, as well as Brian Tully. These three were Massachusetts State Police officers. The Proctor's gone. Buchanan has been reassigned, and so is Tully. She's also suing the town of Canton and the Massachusetts State Police. The House defendants said, no way. We don't want to try this case in any. So Karen filed it in Bristol County. They said, no way, Jose. We do not want another public spectacle. We want it to go to federal. Federal, there is no televisions. No cameras in the courtrooms, I should say. They do not have Zoom either. So if you want to go to the hearings, you have to go to them in person. Will people go? You bet you they will. But the filings are still somewhat public. You have to pay for them, and it's going to be a little bit more money to go look at the motions and stuff. But people do. They pay for it, and they throw it out on the internet. So we will get updates here and there. So it's moved to federal court. Is that a good thing? Well, federal courts sometimes move a little bit more faster than civil courts do. Could this be resolved in a year or two? Maybe, but we don't know. So stay tuned because a lot is going on. Also, I would like to note that Karen Read's Lexus has been fixed. If you recall, Karen Read's Lexus, her taillight was busted. And in the course of them prosecuting her, they took the whole assembly of her taillight out. So she had no taillight at all. So they had to replace the taillight. Also, they took her whole dashboard apart. They were trying to get the data off of her GPS. And then also there's also like this other chip that has some more data. And they destroyed her dashboard. They destroyed the electronics in her Lexus. She finally got her Lexus back. She took it to an auto body repair place. They just thought, hey, we just get this dashboard and put it in. They didn't realize it was going to cost, I think they said it was about $100,000 to replace that. The taillight wasn't that big of a deal. But anyways, long story short, they finally got it all fixed, and Karen Reed's car can be yours if the price is right. Yep, her car is going up for auction, and you too can bid on it. So we'll see what happens with that and how much that goes for, etc. She's got to pay those experts that were two trials. All right, so the House defendants moved the case to federal court. Why? So it's not televised, still open to the public. But there's been smattering that the House defendants want to countersue and sue Karen Reed and Aidan Carney for colluding in witness intimidation. Now, why does that matter? There is a secret so in Karen Reed's case, they have made the filings so you can't see them. They're not open to the public. And in one of those filings was a search warrant to search Karen Reed's phones to find out if she had colluded with Aidan Carney for witness intimidation. Karen Reed had 2 cell phones. Apparently, they haven't downloaded the phones and they haven't had the ability to look at them. Why? Because Special Prosecutor Cosgrove, who is the prosecutor in Aidan Carney's witness intimidation cases, has revisited this topic with, guess who? Judge Krupp. I mean, I can't make this stuff up. Judge Krupp said, you have these cell phones. Yep. And so he has not ruled whether or not Cosgrove has the ability to download her phones, go through them. If he has the ability to do that, he needs to set up a taint team. A taint team is a separate person who is not involved in the case that can go through and look and see if there's any communications between lawyers that is not reviewable, searchable. You can't look at it because it's attorney-client privilege. So somebody else outside looks at the messages and says, okay, you can't look at these, but you can look at this. Judge Krupp has yet to make a decision on that. He is due to get off the bench, I think, sometime this month. Will there be a ruling on this? Stay tuned, right? Because we'll find out. But the interesting thing is that it's not even like a motion. It's under a search warrant. So the filing is really weird. So it's really hard to get any information and updates on that. And then remember, where it's filed under, it's not necessarily publicly known. So will we find out whether or not that search warrant will go through? Stay tuned, because we're going to find out about that as well. And what does that mean? Well, that means that they're going to go through Karen's phones. Are they going to find anything? What are they going to do if they do find something? I can't make this stuff up. So Karen Reed, Aidan Carney, the House defendants, and all that, this is going to continue on for years. So if everybody thinks that they're just going to hide under a rock and it's going to go away, no. Next up is the Kouri Richins versus Utah case. Who is Kouri Richins? Kouri Richins is a mother of 3 boys. She was married to Eric Richins. They live just outside of Salt Lake City in Utah and Summit County. Eric was a successful landscape masonry person, had his own business. Kouri was a house flipper. She would buy houses, get them fixed up, and then sell them. Kouri was a little bit in over her head in relation to her developments. She kept wanting to grow bigger, but she still had a whole bunch of outstanding debts, and she didn't resolve those, but she didn't care because she wanted to move forward. There was a $2.8 million house that she wanted, and she needed to get it. So she thought, well, how do I get more money? If I unalive my husband, I'll inherit his money and any life insurance policies that he has. So in her way to unalive him, It first started on February 14th. She had given him a fentanyl breakfast sandwich. He had an allergic reaction to it, and she just told him, just go take a nap. Everything will be okay. In the meantime, she was out with her paramour having a lovely Valentine's Day rendezvous at one of her properties. Again, I can't make this stuff up. And so he didn't pass away. So a month later, during this time, she asked her, I don't know the relationship to this person exactly. I believe it is some or assistants or somebody that she worked with. I think she was a house cleaner for her. And she's like, do you know anybody who can get me some more fentanyl? So she got some more fentanyl. She needed a stronger dose. And so she then went and made him a Moscow Mule or a lemon drop. We're not sure which one. And gave him this lovely drink. And in the middle of the night, she woke up and he passed away, right? So the police were like, what happened? They're investigated, right? What happened? They knew that he had died of a fentanyl overdose. She stated, well, it was him. He took fentanyl. They found no fentanyl inside the house. So they were a little bit baffled as to what happened. In the meantime, they got a search warrant for her phone. And I'm not telling you how to crime, but if you give your phone to the police, you don't have to give them your password. And if you have a 6-digit encrypted password, it takes a long time for them to crack your code. How do they do that? They have an electronic device, they hook up to it, and it just keeps running the numbers in a sequential order until they get it cracked. Well, it wasn't about until a year and a half, they cracked her phone. And in that, they found the text messages between her and her house cleaner looking for the fentanyl and the paramour and the financial things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So she was charged. But in the meantime, she wrote a book. Again, I can't make this stuff up. She wrote a book about grieving the loss of your father. She went on radio and television to promote her book. She finally got arrested. She's also being charged with financial crimes as well. One of her deliberate schemes was that she took her husband's bank statement from his business, which was very successful. She took the header off of his, put her header on, took the footnote at the bottom and put her footnote and his bank information in between so that she could get a loan for that $2.8 million house that she purchased after he passed away. She also wanted to get into his safe where he had money, and little did she know that he had changed his will and that all of his belongings went to his sister. She didn't know that. So she's being charged for financial crimes. There was a status hearing held on the 5th of December. I covered it in my YouTube channel, so go back into the playlist under Corey Richins and you'll see the latest hearing that had taken place. So again, when you have a pretrial conference hearing, the judge sits down with both parties and says, where are we? What motions do we need to talk about? What motions have we finished up? Do you have anything else to bring to me? Where are we on this case? Are we headed down the right path? And one of the biggest things in the Corey Richins case is whether or not this is going to go to trial and whether or not they're going to get an adequate jury. Summit County is much smaller than Salt Lake City area is, and the defense has been screaming, hey, we're going to get a biased jury. The judge clearly stated, we're not moving this case. They even halted her case to go up to the Supreme Court to say, nope, you're not, the jury stays here. The judge said, listen, we're going to go ahead and give out questionnaires to the jurors. We're going to get that back in real time. We're going to go over it. If we don't think that we can get a jury seated in this county, then we'll go elsewhere. How they're going to do that, I don't know if they're going to bring people in or if they're going to expand the jury pool, but this is where we're headed, and these are the next milestones that we're going to make. There's a defense hearing to exclude experts and state witnesses on January 7th. That's 9:30 in the morning and in person. The next day is the determination of the walk the dog letter on the 8th of January at 9:30 in the morning as well. So experts. So the defense says they want to exclude some of the state's experts. The state says the same thing about some of the defense experts. It's going to be a battle of the experts and who's going to be in to say what, etc. So there's going to be a hearing about that, which is important for them to go through and do this and to have these conversations with these witnesses. So the witnesses will come in and testify as to what they're going to testify. Remember this, there's no jury present. It's just the judge and the parties involved. They go through to see what this expert's going to say and whether or not the judge determines whether or not this information will or will not come in. Can they testify to XYZ? And it's important to have before so that it doesn't waste the jury's time. They walk the dog letter. Oh boy, go into my show notes about the walk the dog letter. Corey Richins had written this letter. At the top of the letter, it said, walk the dog letter. She was basically talking to her mother and her brother about walking her dog. But in the letter, she had stated in a somewhat cryptic, non-cryptic way, you could read between the lines, she was telling them how to testify and what to say to the police, etc. And she was pretty much coercing their testimony. She states that it was a letter to her attorney, who was then Sky Lazaro at the time, and that it was marked for attorney-client privilege only, although it wasn't clearly labeled. So in jail, when you have something that you're distributing to somebody else, if it doesn't have attorney-client privilege labeled correctly, they can read it. And so they read it, and so then they gave it to the prosecution, and the prosecution's like, what the heck, man? Because it's exculpatory evidence against her stating that she's trying to tell people how to testify. So there's a controversy whether it's a letter written to her attorney. She also said she was writing a book. If that she's writing a book and this is part of the information for a book, then it's exculpatory to the prosecution to be used against her. Just remember, while you're in jail, anything you write, anything you say, all your conversations are on your telephone are recorded. Anything you say can and will be used against you in your trial. And if you don't believe me, go to Donna Adelson's case. Go to Charlie Adelson's case. Both of them just keep talking on the phone, just blah, blah, blabby, blabby, blabby about things in their case, and it got used against them. There have been many other criminals who have done the same thing. I'm not telling you how to crime, but I'm just telling you common sense, people, common sense. So the walk the dog letter is a huge, huge, huge part of her case. And again, this is what we're talking about in cases about what evidence can and cannot come in and why. So they are going to argue the walk the dog letter and some other motions on the 8th. So 2 days of full hearings. Now, the judge in this case, again, is very, very worried about spoiling the jury pool. He does not want to live stream any of these motions hearings. And in fact, he is also making all of the current motions non-public, meaning they're to be filed, I forget the wording, they are filed under seal. So that means the public can't get access to any more of the further motions, because the motions basically spell out what's going on. And that's how you get the tea well before the trial comes out, because you get to read what each side is arguing. The judge said that he is going to seal those moving forward so that the public doesn't know. He does not want to spoil the jury pool any further than it may or may not have been spoiled. So that is why the December 5th hearing was delayed a little bit to come out on YouTube, because the judge ordered that. When will we hear about the January 7th hearing? Maybe not until the 8th, maybe not until the 9th, maybe not at all. It depends on what the judge's orders are. Will this case be live streamed once a jury is in place? We don't know. The judge has been very, very vocal about live streaming and the implications of that. So stay tuned, because we will come back and see how that case is going to wrap up. When will jury selection begin? Sometime after these two hearings. They're sending out questionnaires to start their voir dire process of the jury. The date of February 10th has been thrown out there. Will they have sent them out and get them back and start reviewing the 10th? We don't know. And the trial date had been set for the 23rd of February 2026. Will that date still remain? Remember, everything is very fluid and anything can go off the rails at any point in time. As we saw in the Brian Walsh case, he had 3 charges against him. He pled just before the trial was supposed to start. He'd pled guilty to the 2 charges. So those 2 charges were taken off, and the prosecution had to scramble quickly and eliminate anything in reference to those 2 charges. So witnesses or whatever that they were going to call, yeet, goodbye. Corey Richins could plead anytime. At any time she could plead. Even during the trial, she can plead. And everything halts, and then they stop, and she pleads, and then that's the end. So there's still a lot of balls up in the air for this case. One of the main things is, are they going to seat a jury in Summit County? Have they spoiled the jury? Does the jury pool already know everything that has happened in her case, and they are going to be biased, and they're not going to be able to set aside their thoughts and opinions and be able to be impartial? We will see. So that is still a very interesting case. All right, moving on. Aaron Spencer. Wow. If you haven't heard me talk about this case, again, you just can't make this stuff up. Aaron Spencer is accused of unaliving Michael Fossler, who is a 67-year-old man. Aaron Spencer learned that his daughter, who was 13 at the time, was being SA'd by Michael Fossler, who is 67. I cannot make this stuff up. When Aaron Spencer found out that his daughter was having this inappropriate relationship with this man, he went to Michael Fossler's girlfriend and said, "Tell me everything you know about Fossler. I want to hear everything about him, etc., etc., etc." She then went to a friend of hers who is a mandatory reporter. That mandatory reporter then went to the police. Even though she heard it secondhand, is she allowed to actually mandate the report that an inappropriate relationship happened? Either way, it doesn't matter. So she went and told the police. The police arrived at Aaron Spencer's house. Aaron Spencer was very cautious and very deliberate in his conversations with the police because he didn't know how to handle it. He had just found out. He was talking to his daughter. He hadn't quite figured out all of the pieces to the puzzle just yet. And the police are at his doorstep. They want to question his daughter. And as a cautionary parent, he said, "Hold on and wait. I need to get the full information. But before we move forward, what is the procedure in moving forward with the prosecution case against Fossler? How does this work? How does he get in jail? How long is he in jail for? Is he able to get out, etc., etc., etc.?" And the police had a conversation, recorded this conversation, and basically told him the steps and stuff. And Aaron wasn't 100% thrilled about what was being stated. So he wanted to hold off and wait on interviewing his daughter. But in the meantime, he did ask about taking the law into his own hands. Now, this was in July. Long story short, Fossler was arrested and charged with 47 counts of inappropriate things with a minor. We don't know exactly all of the charges. We just know the count number. You can envision all of the counts that it was done, and the counts were against Aaron Spencer's daughter, not anybody else. Although we think there are other victims out there, but not anybody in accordance. Nobody else came forward that was being involved in the case against Michael Fossler. So what happened? In October, one night, Aaron Spencer's dog was barking very loudly and erratically. The dog was in his daughter's bedroom. He went to the bedroom, found out that she was missing. It was midnight. He goes to his wife and tells her to call the police. He said, I'm going to go out and look for her. As he's driving down the road, he sees Michael Fossler's truck. He flashes his lights, honks his horn, tries to get Michael Fossler to pull over. Michael Fossler is in the car with his 13-year-old daughter. Michael Fossler does not pull over. Aaron Spencer does a pit maneuver, which is tap the back of the truck. The truck goes spinning, ends up in a ditch. Aaron Spencer says, get out of the vehicle. Michael Fossler grabs Aaron Spencer's daughter to make her not come out of the vehicle. And he's screaming, get out of the vehicle, get out of the vehicle. Michael Fossler gets out of the vehicle. Aaron Spencer tells him to put his hands up. Michael Fossler says, F you, and goes to grab for something. And Aaron Spencer just unloads his pistol on him. Michael Fossler falls to the ground. Aaron Spencer's daughter gets out. They have a moment. The police are on the scene very quickly because they'd been called by 911. Aaron Spencer also calls 911. I think he tells them where they're at. In the meantime, Michael Fossler has dash cam video. The police seized it. They looked at the video, apparently, put it into evidence, but guess what? It's missing. Just magically disappeared. Nobody knows where it's at. And the defense is screaming to the high heavens, hey, this video is missing, and it could prove that my client was justified in his actions. So Aaron Spencer got arrested. The prosecution in Arkansas does not have to go to a grand jury to indict somebody. The prosecutor gets to just indict you. So if the prosecutor feels that he has enough evidence, you're indicted. Also, this is a very small town. They only have 2 judges in this town. Barbara Elmore, who is the judge, was also the judge who had put the charges on Michael Fossler. And in Michael Fossler's bail hearing, she let Michael Fossler go on a $50,000 bond, and he only posted $5,000 to get out. What happened that night? Apparently, Michael Fossler had been in contact with Aaron Spencer's daughter, even though he wasn't supposed to. That was one of his orders of his release on bail, was not to contact the victim. But he had been contacting her, secretly lured her out that night, took her to his house. They had inappropriate relations, and he was bringing her back when Aaron Spencer found them. Yep, Aaron Spencer found out after the incident with Michael Fossler that Michael Fossler had SA'd his daughter once again. The prosecution alleges that the relationship between Aaron Spencer's daughter and Michael Fossler is consensual. Now, you tell me, is a 13-year-old allowed to consent to a relationship with a 67-year-old man? You be the judge. So there is a pre-trial hearing on the 17th of December. Will it be televised? Will we be able to see it? We don't know. This is a very small town. Will there be a pool camera from one of the news stations? We hope so, but we don't know. The judge has stated that this is headed for trial. The prosecution and the defense said, whoa, wait, we still have a lot of materials to go through. We have a lot of filings to go through. Can we have an extension? She said, no. This is also the same judge that put a gag order on this case immediately right after Aaron had been indicted. Without having a hearing or having any information from the defense or the prosecution, she went ahead and signed a gag order immediately. Aaron Spencer's defense team took it all the way up to the Arkansas Supreme Court. The Arkansas Supreme Court said that this was prejudicial against Aaron Spencer and ordered the immediate ordered the immediate release of the gag order. It wasn't done until like a month later. Finally, then more information started coming out from the defense team as to exactly what happened. Is Aaron Spencer justified in his actions? Well, that is what he is claiming in his defense. So the response motions, all of the motions were due by December the 3rd. There were no extensions issued. Judge said, nope, this is going. This is headed for pretrial hearing on the 17th. There's motions to dismiss. There's motions about evidence that's coming in or coming out. They've gone ahead and subpoenaed people already. The docket is just bananas right now. So what's going to happen? We don't know. So hopefully on the 17th this week, we'll get to hear more information. So stay tuned. Spencer is also running for sheriff. I kid you not. Spencer has a military background and he's like, Sheriff, you stink. I'm going to run for sheriff. The election for that is November of 2026. If Aaron Spencer gets convicted and he is in jail, does he still get to run for sheriff? I don't think so, but stranger things have happened. So I will do an update on the latest court filings in the Aaron Spencer case, the missing camera footage. Does that sound familiar? Justification as a defense. And could Fossler's girlfriend have known about his relationship to Aaron Spencer's daughter? And how does that play out? Will his case be dismissed? Remember, they did file a motion for dismissal. Will that be heard? Will this go to trial? And that both the defense and prosecution had asked for more time and she denied it. So no cameras in the courtroom, no Zoom, possibly only boots on the ground, people only allowed to go into court and watch the hearing itself. Who knows? So those are some of the interesting cases that I'm following currently. And you think, oh, it's the holidays. So, the court's going to go on break, right? Well, yeah, they will. And we'll get a little bit of a reprieve between probably Christmas and the New Year's. But court's always hopping and popping. So you just never know what's going to pop up. So if you like these cases, please make sure to like and subscribe. Yes, so that you can hear the latest developments on what is happening in these cases and more. And if there's a case out there that interests you and you'd like me to do a deep dive, put it in the comments and let me know. This is all that I have for you on this wonderful case catch-up. It's a lot. I mean, we're over here an hour into it, and it's just, I could keep on going, right? There's all the nuances of these cases. So if you like what you see, make sure you like and subscribe so you can hear about the current cases that you are interested in. We're back in court tomorrow for the Brian Walsh trial. Will the jury come back with a verdict tomorrow? So we're on verdict watch. Thanks for watching Legalese 123. Make sure to like and subscribe. Tell your friends. We'll be back for more tomorrow. Thanks for watching Legalese 123. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe for more content.